You're listening to the Fanalist Podcast. Follow on Twitter at TheFanalystPod.
Welcome to the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Andrew, riding solo in studio at the moment. It's Tuesday, June 21st. Lots to get to in today's podcast. Jayden will be joining me shortly. We're going to discuss some NHL trade talk, the Blue Jays who are in the midst of a hot pursuit in the AL East, as well as some NBA talk. The Cavs are champions. Let's talk about what that means for LeBron. Also, at the end of the show, I got some bonus content for you. There was a recent announcement that DraftKings is picking up daily fantasy CFL. Now, I think this is great for the league, and I'll let you know why I think they should fully embrace it and take advantage of the potential spotlight this could create for CFL. However, before I get to any of that, let's talk about the US Open, and despite the incompetent USGA committee that almost wrecked what was a pretty extraordinary weekend of golf, Dustin Johnson made a statement winning his first ever major. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at TheFanalystPod, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and like our page on Facebook. Now, as I mentioned, Dustin Johnson winning his first ever major event. It was the US Open, and I'm going to give you my 3 reasons for why I think he was able to pull it off this time. Now, first off, we remember back to last year's US Open at Chambers Bay. It was a very different ending for Dustin Johnson, a disturbing 3-putt that cost him the championship, and what really helped him this time was he overcame the adversity. Once again, there's always something that seems to happen with this guy. This time, it was the USGA. There was an issue on, I don't actually remember what hole it was, but there was an issue where they'd assumed he'd grounded his putter and caused the ball to move backwards away from the hole, and after looking at a video replay, myself and a whole bunch of tour experts, a whole bunch of tour players, agree that Dustin Johnson was not responsible for that ball moving. However, instead of the USGA just letting it go, they decided to come up to him a few holes later, let him know that they were going to be investigating it, and letting him know after his round if they were going to penalize him a stroke or not. Now, with Dustin Johnson, that one stroke could really mean a lot. That one stroke could be the entire difference between him winning, between him going to a playoff, and possibly choking away another opportunity at winning not just an event, a major event, and the US Open for a second year in a row. But instead, Dustin Johnson overcame that struggle. He just put it behind in his mind. He forgot about it. He went out and played great golf. And on the 18th hole, he got a birdie to make up for that lost stroke that the USGA later did take from him, and he ended up winning the US Open by 3 strokes. Now, how did he do it? This is my reason number 2. He played fantastic. He was first in greens in regulation, including 22 in a row at one point. He bombed it further than anyone else, by a ton. He was outdriving everybody. He shot 4 under at Oakmont, a course that some of the tour's most notables were saying you could not shoot under par at. Dustin Johnson, he managed to do that. And reason number 3 that Dustin Johnson was able to win the US Open was because he was the best player in the world this past weekend. Jim Furyk was a very close second. If he didn't bogey 18 on Sunday, he would have been the only golfer besides Dustin Johnson to have a bogey-free round, and he would have shot a 65, tying the best rounds of the week. Now, a little bit more on Furyk. He finished tied for second, one of the biggest movers on Sunday, while everyone else, the Spieths, the Kuchers, the Watson, Scott, Lowry, were all blowing up. I think Shane Lowry entered the final round with a 4-stroke lead, completely gone. Almost halfway through the round, Dustin Johnson had caught up and was just building a lead. Don't forget about Rory as well. He didn't even make the weekend. Dustin Johnson, this weekend, was the best player in the world. And of course, since Dustin Johnson played so well, and now that he's won a major, people want to start comparing him to the other top players on the PGA Tour, which means that now there's suggestion that instead of a big 3, there's a big 4. Dustin Johnson, Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, and Rory McIlroy, not necessarily in that order, but that those 4 have separated themselves, put themselves on a tier above the rest of the tour, and I don't really agree with that. I think that there's still a big 3, and I don't think Jason Day's in that anymore. I don't think that Jason Day can be considered on the same level as Rory McIlroy, Jordan Spieth, and Dustin Johnson. I think he needs to be considered above those three right now. He has been so consistent. He's been playing so well. And if it wasn't for a poor opening round, he kind of had a rough go on Thursday, which he recovered from, unlike Rory McIlroy, the reason he missed the cut. Jason Day, he was able to come down the stretch, made a bit of a charge. He had a great eagle coming down on the back nine. Sure, it was a chip in, a little bit of luck involved. You have to be good to get lucky. Don't forget that. Okay. But of course, on 17 and 18, he ended with a double bogey, which ended his chances. But if he had avoided that and parred out, he would have finished T2 in this event, while Jordan Spieth was shooting 9 over. And as I mentioned, Rory didn't even make the cut. During the broadcast with Fox, Jack Nicklaus said something that really struck a chord with me. He said that once you win a major, they become much more easier to win because you've done it before. You know, all of a sudden you're a little bit more comfortable having that lead. You can come down that back nine, maybe even down the 18th hole, and feel a little bit more comfortable. Now, if you look at the Masters and you saw how Jordan Spieth ended, you might disagree with that statement, but I'm going to take Jack Nicklaus's word. I feel like he knows what he's talking about. It is Jack Nicklaus after all. So here's what I'll do. With Dustin Johnson, I'm going to watch him. I want to see how he finishes 2016. Because there's been discussion about Dustin Johnson and how much he really wants this. He doesn't put in as much work as other golfers. You know, some people say he coasts on his talent alone. He's able to drive the ball further than anyone, and there's a few other parts of his physicality that benefit him in a point that it doesn't help other players. So he has a bit of an advantage. It's kind of like a hockey player, right? The guys who are 3 inches taller than everyone. They got a little extra body mass. They put on muscle easier. Those are the guys who don't have to try as hard. And maybe those are the guys who it doesn't quite work. Maybe someone like Phil Kessel. Maybe people look at Phil Kessel and say, you know, he has some God-given talent he was born with, so he doesn't worry about his weight. He comes into training camp, he comes into the regular season every year, a little overweight, and that's a weak point. Yet Phil Kessel, who, you know, destroys teams, he just went to the Pittsburgh Penguins and won a Stanley Cup. I think he's doing all right for himself. And, you know, Dustin Johnson, I think he can grow on this, but I want to see how he finishes off the season. There's 2 more majors to come. Can he keep this up? Or is he going to slide out of that, you know, that pocket that we're putting him in? If we call him a top 4 player in the world right now, which of course, according to official World Golf rankings, he fully deserves, but can he keep that up? Can he come out next into his next event and can he play as well? Or is he going to be content with his result? Is he not going to push as much as the other guys do? I feel like Jordan Spieth is out every waking moment trying to figure out what's wrong right now. I feel like Rory McIlroy, maybe not to the same extent, but I feel like he's going to be working on it. He's more hungry. He's proven that the way that he's competed the last few years. And of course, Jason Day, I compare him to Tiger more than anyone else on this tour. I feel like Jason Day has elements of his game and especially his mindset that's much more like Tiger. He wants to go out there and win every event. He always wants to contend. This past weekend, he did almost contend right down at the end there. But Dustin, I just want to see how you finish things off. Not ready to crown you the champion yet, because look what happens when we crown someone too early. Look at Steph Curry. We suddenly found out he was a one-trick pony. Is Dustin Johnson just a guy who can drive it far? Are all these other elements of his game going to disappear slowly? Or can he continue to be consistent and put himself in position to win these events? Because with his advantage off the tee, he could be somebody to really watch out for. Now, I know that my opinion on this is going to be different from a lot of people, and that's okay. I'm really comfortable with that. I feel like Jason Day, he's going to be out competing at all the majors throughout the rest of the season, as well as a few other key events. I don't know if Jordan Spieth and Rory will be competing quite the same, and Dustin Johnson, I'm going to wait and see. Now, if you agree with me or disagree with anything, let me know why. You can comment below or tweet me at FanalystDrew about this topic or anything that we get to during this podcast. Thanks for tuning into the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Andrew, and you can follow us at TheFanalystPod. Jayden joining me now, talking about the NBA Finals. Cleveland Cavaliers coming back in historic fashion from being down 3-1. Jayden, everyone's talking about LeBron James. If now he's better than Michael Jordan, is he not better than Michael Jordan? Where does he sit among the greats? What do you think?
Well, in my opinion, I think that it's two different positions that are being played. LeBron at the small forward and Michael being a shooting guard, strictly a shooting guard. Well, not strictly a shooting guard, but that's what the coaches put him as. Two different positions, two different generations. Back in the day, they didn't use the three-point line that much. It was more, you can get up on your guy, hand check him if you want, face guard him, get up in his grill because you know that he's probably not going to shoot. He's going to want to drive to the basket, be aggressive. This day and age, it's the three-point line. It's live or die, it seems. Every team wants to shoot the three. Every team wants to be the Golden State Warriors. I don't think you can compare the two just because it's two different generations, two different, completely different players. Just the way that they go about a game. LeBron is more aggressive and want to get to the hoop and draw fouls, and Michael Jordan's more. I think he's more finesse, more of a, but he also has that side that he's like he has that killer instinct. He's kind of like a Kobe. He has that killer instinct to want to be great. When LeBron is more aggressive and uses his body to get to the rim more.
Now I understand that comparing the two, it's two completely different generations. It's really not fair to either of these two to be comparing them, but nonetheless, everyone is, and it's a huge topic of discussion right now. It's something that's going to go on for the next few weeks at least, as the NBA is heading toward the draft. People are always looking for something to talk about. Of course, there's some guys who are now hitting free agency, opting out of contracts, so there's other stuff to talk about. But the big conversation is, where is LeBron ranked among the greats after winning his third championship? And see, what I feel like is, in order to have this conversation, not even to have this conversation, I feel like people already they still say, Michael Jordan has 6 rings. In order for LeBron James to be compared to him, he needs to get to that. He needs to get to 6 rings. And I think that's fair. But what the deal is that once he gets to 6 rings, I don't feel like he's actually going to get the credit for it. Let's say he goes out the next 3 seasons. Okay, let's say, some of these big names on free agency, let's say Durant stays in Oklahoma. Okay, and Oklahoma and Golden State keep battling it out in the West, and Cleveland keeps walking through the East. Things don't usually work out this way, but let's say the Cavaliers, they win the East the next few years, not really hard to believe, and they continue to go to the finals, and they win the next 2 years, 3 years back to back to back. People still won't be ready to call LeBron better than Michael Jordan.
No, it's tough to, because it's, like I said before, it's two different generations. It's two completely different games. It was much more physical back then, and now it's like you touch someone and you get a foul. Back then, if you're going to the bucket, you might get punched in the face. You might get kneed in the groin, and there still won't be a foul. But nowadays, they're so strict on the fouls that I think it's tough to compare the two generations and the two legacies of LeBron James and Michael Jordan.
Because the deal with Michael Jordan is he went to 6 finals and he won all 6 of them. He got rings in all 6 finals that he attended. LeBron James, it's already too late to do that, to have a perfect record. There was that NBA Finals against the Dallas Mavericks where he completely froze up and disappeared. There was the one against the San Antonio Spurs. Same thing. He couldn't get it done. He kind of disappeared. And I feel like those moments themselves have already done it for LeBron haters. It's already too late for LeBron to be better than Michael Jordan, but I think we need to look at it and find a way. We're not going to be able to figure it out now, and it's probably not going to be you or me that figure it out.
There's never going to be a right answer. It's always going to be opinionated. Your opinion against my opinion. Like, there's not one person that can strictly say that this is the right answer, that this person is better than this person. It's all opinionated.
Absolutely. I mean, LeBron James, he's getting a little bit older now, and odds are he's not going to continue to be this player. But let's say he wins the championship for the next 9 years in a row. You're not going to have 100% of people agreeing who's better than who. That's just not the case. And, it's something that's frustrating because you can't actually decide who's the best. But I think what's even more frustrating is, I was pushing you to give me an answer, and I'm not the only one who does that. Everyone's pushing everyone to pick somebody. Why can't we just have guys who are the best player of a generation? Because there's no debate. In the last 10 years, LeBron James is, much better than any of the guys that he's played with. I think he's much better than Kobe Bryant. I think he's much better than Tim Duncan. And, At this point, I just don't think it's fair to have to hold him up to somebody like Michael Jordan, a legend of the game. In the NHL, you can't compare guys anymore to Wayne Gretzky, to Gordie Howe, and those greats. It's just not fair. In the MLB, you can't compare somebody to Babe Ruth, right? They're two different worlds.
Me personally, I have my opinions, and we're going to save that for another time.
I knew what I said about Kobe
Bryant, about Tim Duncan, but the fact of the matter is that they're all completely different players, and they're all great in their own little world.
We don't need to have a best player of all time. We don't need to have any of that. I love having an MVP of a season. I think they need to find a better way to choose the most valuable player, because I think what we've learned thus far is that Draymond Green is the most valuable player on the Golden State Warriors. And with Cleveland, of course, it's LeBron James. But I think we need to shy away from this all-time greatness talk and just focus on what matters right now. Who's going to win the next championship? If you had to pick right now, who wins it that next season?
How about you get back to me after the offseason? Because this offseason is going to be fun to see where Kevin Durant goes, to see if LeBron James stays, because there are rumors that he might head out to LA to join the Lakers and to carry on Kobe's legacy, if you might say.
Okay, that's fair to want to wait. But, okay, fine. If you're not going to answer, I will. If everyone stays pat, if players re-sign with who they, if Dirk Nowitzki stays in Dallas, if Kevin Durant stays in Oklahoma, if LeBron James stays in Cleveland, I'm giving the Cavs the next two championships. I think Kyrie Irving's come out of a shell. Maybe not a shell, but I think he's finally broken out to be the point guard.
If everyone stays healthy, you think the Cavs can beat the Warriors for the next couple years?
I think they can beat them the next 2 years. I believe they're going to be trading Kevin Love. So I just mentioned that if all things stay equal, if Kevin Love stays in Cleveland, will that continue? I think next season they will win. I think they would if things were to stay the same. But if not, I think general manager LeBron James will find somewhere nice for Kevin Love to go, play the next little while of his career while getting something great in return.
See, I think that it will be let me just look back on the series for 1 second. Let me just give you my opinion. I think that if the Warriors were healthy, if they had Bogut, if they had Draymond Green and he was not suspended, it would be a whole different series. I'm not saying that the Cavs played terrible. They played amazing. I want to give it up to LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, all those guys. They played amazing. They hit big shots. They were clutch. They just played amazing basketball. But I think that if the Warriors were healthy and the NBA wasn't rigged, that it might be a completely different series.
Well, that's something that's going to be pretty hard to debate with you, whether the NBA is rigged. I don't quite have the answer for that, and you certainly don't either. So we'll just leave it at that. We'll see how this offseason goes. We'll touch on this, I'm sure soon as well. There's could be a lot of movement in the NBA this season. Certainly going to be an exciting time for free agents. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at TheFanalystPod, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and like our page on Facebook. So after watching LeBron James finally bringing a championship back to his hometown of Cleveland, or at least his home state of Ohio, it kind of had me thinking. So I sent out a little tweet on Twitter, and I actually, was thinking, does watching LeBron bring a championship home intrigue Steve Stamkos? So I put that out on Twitter, didn't think much of it until a friend messaged me, Jayden, and showed me an article on TSN site Bar Down, where they actually used my tweet in an article that was asking the exact same thing. Does what LeBron did actually, affect Steven Stamkos' decision? So I'll leave it in your hands. What do you think? Do you think what LeBron James did will have an impact on what Steve Stamkos decides and future athletes?
No, I really don't think so. Two different sports. LeBron James, I just don't think it could happen. I don't think Stamkos will come to Toronto. I hope it will, but I don't truly think it will.
Now, I'm not a Leafs fan by any means. I could care less if the Leafs go back into this deep, dark hole for another 50 decades. It wouldn't bother me whatsoever. I wouldn't lose a second of sleep. They're actually more interesting to talk about when they're not good. And now that I've made enemies with quite a few of our listeners, I'll digress from that. Because what I actually think is that stuff like this does affect athletes. I think a whole bunch of guys watched what LeBron James did and they started to think about it, right? How come nobody brought up, Kevin Durant's a free agent. Maybe he wants to bring a championship home. Maybe he wants to go to Washington and bring one home. Why wouldn't you? That's, these are the franchises that, maybe you didn't grow up a fan of the franchise that you were closest to. I mean, LeBron James, wasn't he a Bulls fan growing up?
Here's the thing. I know that athletes think about it. It must have crossed their mind at least, a lot of times during their career. There's thinking about it, and then there's the realistic chance that it will happen. They love Stamkos in Tampa Bay. And I think Stamkos has said probably not once, not twice, but more than 3 times that he is not, he wants to focus on winning a cup with Tampa Bay. Now, that didn't happen this year, but who's to say that it won't happen next year? I think he will stay in Tampa Bay and not come to Toronto.
See, I understand that. I won't be surprised at all if Steve Stamkos stays in Tampa Bay, because what happened 2 years ago? They made the finals, didn't get it done. What happened this past season? They made the conference finals. Didn't get it done because Stamkos was hurt and he arrived late in that series. But looking at the future, the future is bright for Tampa Bay. For the most part, there should be no reason that they can't continue to compete. But if you have any doubt in your mind, if Steve Stamkos is considering leaving, why wouldn't Toronto be at the very top of his list? I mean,
what do they have to show for it?
The only thing that you could say is Steve Stamkos wants to win right now, and he still thinks the Leafs are 2 or 3 years away. And I would understand that completely. But Steve Stamkos is still at the age where he can give it a year or two. If he wants to be a true leader, he wants to be the captain of a squad, he can certainly do this in Toronto. And, he's going to have a number 1 overall pick, Austin Matthews, in his shadow, just watching him and trying to learn from him. He's going to have Mitchell Marner coming up. He's going to have a bunch of guys that, there's a whole bunch of players in the Leafs organization who are looking for a Steve Stamkos to look up to.
That's the only thing that would be intriguing if Stamkos were to come to Toronto. How would he fit along with Austin Matthews or Patrick Laine? Who knows? We don't know yet.
It's going to be Austin Matthews, but continue.
Okay, so if it is Austin Matthews, how would those two connect? Would they be on the same line? Would Austin Matthews have to take a backseat and go play on the wing, which he hasn't done in the KHL? And what about William Nylander coming up? He's a speedy forward that can do some damage, as we saw on the back end of last season. Now, how will those 3 bring Toronto some success?
Those 3 specifically would probably be split between the first and second line 3 seasons from now, because Mitchell Marner would also be up there. They'll figure something out. But I see so much potential with what the Toronto Maple Leafs have right now. And I think Steve Stamkos, somewhere in his mind, he has to be considering, do I want to be a part of this? Do I want to, come home to Toronto, play with these guys? They've proven that they want to win. The ownership group has gone out and got a general manager and, a coach that just want to do nothing more than win, as a Detroit Red Wings fan.
And the resume shows it.
Yeah, of course. And as a Detroit Red Wings fan, I know that resume very, very well. And right now it's getting kind of scary in Detroit. With Datsuk leaving to go back home overseas, there's another guy going home to finish his career. Why wouldn't Steven Stamkos consider doing that? But instead of waiting for the end of his career, do it right now. Just go to Toronto. Sure, it's going to be a few years before you maybe make the playoffs, but you're going to jump. If Steve Stamkos were to sign with the Toronto Maple Leafs tomorrow, they would be favored to make the playoffs more than they would be to not make it.
I don't think so, just because of Stamkos' injury.
Look at the Eastern Conference. There's a few Canadian teams there. Ottawa, who knows what you're going to get out of them? Montreal, with Carey Price is healthy, they're probably a playoff team, but you never know. And there's a whole bunch of other teams in the Eastern Conference that you really can't have too much faith in. The Maple Leafs could certainly make the playoffs next year if they get Steve Stamkos, if Austin Matthews is NHL ready, which I certainly think he is.
If every single one of the Maple Leafs young players plays to their potential and can play at a high level against the other veterans and pros in the NHL, then maybe there's a chance they make the playoffs. But
well, you said potential. If they play to their potential, I think the Leafs next year could win a playoff round.
Let's not get too far ahead of ourselves.
I don't think that's that far ahead at all. I mean, they added Frederik Andersen yesterday. We heard, he's a guy who's been playing fantastic in Anaheim this past season. 22-9 record. This guy likes to win games. He's got a save percentage of .919, goal against average of 2.3. Having him in net over Jonathan Bernier, it's a great shift for this organization. And I think Steven Stamkos is actually considering this.
Well, I'm glad that they got Frederik Andersen. I'm glad that they got a goalie that knows how to win and has been in that winning market. He's a big goalie. over 200 pounds, over 220 pounds, and I'm actually, in my mind, he's better than Bernier, and in my mind, he will start over Bernier this coming season if he can stay healthy in the offseason and if the Leafs don't pick up another goalie.
He will certainly be playing over Jonathan Bernier this coming season. Something you mentioned there is that you really like Anderson because he's coming from a winning franchise. Let's not forget Jonathan Bernier came from the Los Angeles Kings, another franchise that was doing pretty well.
But with the Leafs, he hasn't really shown much to show me that he's a number one starter and can stay that consistently.
Of course, he's proven that he isn't. But I think what the Leafs are also going to take advantage of, talk about already the nice pieces that they have, what they've acquired, and what's soon to come. With Jonathan Bernier, if they can kind of pump his tires at the beginning of next season, there's going to be some teams looking for goaltending help. There's only so many guys that are out on the market right now. The Calgary Flames are interested in Marc-Andre Fleury. If he doesn't leave, if he were to probably not re-sign with Pittsburgh, it's kind of hard to tell at this point, but if he were to go anywhere else, Calgary's looking for a goaltender, and if they have absolutely nothing else, and they try and go with somebody else to start the season, and a few games in, Jonathan Bernier, he's played 3 or 4 games back up for the Leafs. He's got a shutout and a pretty respectable goal against average and save percentage. You could really sell high on Jonathan Bernier at that point in time. I think Frederik Andersen is certainly going to be this team's number one goaltender. I don't think there's even a question about that.
Okay, now you're talking about Marc-Andre Fleury. Now, how great would he look in blue and white? I think that
It's too late now. Frederik Andersen's already been signed. There's absolutely no way that they signed him to $5 million a year to be a backup goaltender.
I'm just saying that you create a lot of fantasy situations.
Okay.
You've talked about that in the past couple podcasts, like crazy scenarios that probably wouldn't happen. But if you were the GM of Pittsburgh, would you make the trade Bernier for Marc-Andre Fleury? Bernier and a couple picks for Marc-Andre Fleury.
Absolutely not. Would I take Bernier and a couple picks for him? Sure, Bernier could be my backup goaltender behind Matt Murray, and I would love a few picks. But there's absolutely no way that any team in the NHL would accept that. Not to mention, like I said, the Leafs, they just signed Frederik Andersen to this 5-year extension, $5 million a year. Taking that cap hit from Marc-Andre Fleury that's way too much money to be spending on goaltending. It's absolutely not going to happen, and there's no debate for it. It's just not going to happen.
All right, well, my final thought on Marc-Andre Fleury is that I think that he could use a fresh start, get out of Pittsburgh, get out of that area, maybe go over to the Western Conference and see
Calgary could be a great spot for him.
Exactly, some real competition, and get to play, have some young guys in front of you, some speed, some goal-scoring ability. I think it could be a good spot for him.
Yeah, I think there's a few good spots for Marc-Andre Fleury. Another one would be the Winnipeg Jets. Yes, they just re-signed Michael Hutchinson, but if they wanted to, if they wanted to put a number one goalie there and figure something out, Marc-Andre Fleury, certainly there's a package to be made with some of those players with the Jets. There's really a lot of options. It's still very early in this point in the offseason for the NHL, as it is with the NBA. We were talking earlier. It's just too early to make too many decisions, but I would certainly be surprised if I see Marc-Andre Fleury re-signing with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it wouldn't surprise me whatsoever to see him go anywhere else. And if he goes to the Toronto Maple Leafs, I'll eat my shorts.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Jayden, and you can follow us at TheFanalystPod.
Now, despite the Toronto Blue Jays losing their last 2 games, they're actually still 7-3 in their last 10. They're only 2.5 games behind the division-leading Baltimore Orioles, Jayden. With the emergence of Michael Saunders, Josh Donaldson being the AL Player of the Week last week, Devin Travis getting back into the lineup, and finally, just lighting it up with that bat over the last 7 days. Are you starting to believe in this Toronto Blue Jays team again? Do you think they have a playoff push in them?
Oh, absolutely. With the bat that Saunders is now possessing, it's crazy how he had 3 home runs the other night versus Baltimore. And I kind of feel bad for the catcher, and I kind of feel bad for the pitcher of Baltimore because they threw him 3 straight outside fastballs, and he smashed them.
Oh, he just had an incredible game. And I was mentioning to you before, I think once Joey Votto retires, Michael Saunders could be the best Canadian in professional baseball. And how great is it to have him as a Blue Jay?
Oh, it's amazing, and especially if we go far in the playoffs, it'll be a sense of pride that we have a true Canadian boy on our Toronto Blue Jays baseball team, the only one in Canada. I'm excited to see how Michael Saunders will develop over this season and over these next few seasons as a Toronto Blue Jay.
With the rumors of Jose Bautista possibly being the most likely candidate to leave the Blue Jays, just obviously so many injury problems with him. It was just announced today that he has turf toe. That's disappointing, of course, and he's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks, so he's going to be out for a little while. I think people are going to be a little bit more comfortable if Jose Bautista doesn't manage to re-sign with this team, having a guy like Michael Saunders in that outfield with Kevin Pillar and, another great guy who's been playing extremely well, Ezequiel Carrera.
I'm a huge fan of Carrera. I've grown to become a fan of him. Me personally, I like players that can bunt, that can run. You just don't see it in the game anymore. They're a special kind of breed, kind of like the Kobe Bryants of the world. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
You must be the first guy in the history of the world to compare Ezequiel Carrera to Kobe Bryant.
Hey, I'm just kidding. But anyways, I love Carrera. I love the effort that he puts out. He covers as much ground as Kevin Pillar does in that outfield. He's a very quick right fielder, and I think that he can do some damage with this Blue Jays lineup, especially in the leadoff spot. If they need a quick bunt to get him aboard, he can do it. If they need a clutch single, he can do it. I'm impressed.
Between him and Dalton Pompey, I'm not really too worried about who would hold that third position in the outfield. Once again, Kevin Pillar, he's got that spot locked up until he can't play anymore. And Michael Saunders, give this man a just sign him to a huge extension. I'm sold. Of course, it's probably a little too soon to be that sold, but I'm really happy with what we've seen out of him, his approach at the plate, and just the way he's been carrying himself. The thing that hurts the most is, what if we had this guy for all of last season? We really could have used that extra bat. Not at the end of the season, of course, but earlier in the year could have made things a little bit easier towards the end. You never know how things would have ended. Maybe they win the conference, or the AL at least. Maybe they go on to win the World Series. We'll never know. But of course, Michael Saunders, which I'm going to say once again, playing terrific, especially with that that hat trick game with the 3 home runs. Another guy who's obviously playing fantastic, Josh Donaldson, showing his AL MVP ways over the last week, being the AL Player of the Week. He's having a fantastic time. What do you think about Josh Donaldson finally being able to turn around?
I'm glad to see that he can consistently be a threat at the third base position. I've seen him make some great defensive plays these past couple days. I'm sold. He's back to his MVP ways.
I think he needs to definitely keep it up for a few more weeks to regain a position as being the top third baseman, not in the AL but in the AL East. There's a lot of competition right now. Evan Longoria is just playing terrific with the Tampa Bay Rays, and Manny Machado. This guy's fantastic with the Orioles. It's definitely pretty interesting because it's quite rare to have a good third baseman on your team. A lot of teams don't have quite the option at third base as the AL teams do right now. Josh Donaldson, though, certainly finally figuring things out. He's been batting, I think, .316 the last month. He's got 7 home runs. He's going to add a few more next month. I think he'll pass 7 home runs. He's going to, approach 25 to 30 RBIs in the next month. This is the time of year when he starts to heat up. The Rogers Center, the roof is open. It's starting to, not just the bats are warming up. It's starting to warm up in Toronto. I think that's huge for this team.
Especially with the fans. The fans have been tremendous at this start of the season. I know it hasn't been the greatest start, but just coming out and supporting the team night in, night out, day games, weekday day games, you don't get a lot of fans, but you still see close to being sold out stadium. It's great to see from the Toronto faithful that they still have faith in this Blue Jays team.
Yeah, hopefully, management sees this and they reward the fans with possibly, something huge at the trade deadline, maybe something in the upcoming off season, add a piece to that rotation. Because as we've seen as of late, there's still some problems with this rotation. Sure, for a while there, they had the best ERA in baseball combined, but, now there's talk of Sanchez and his inning limit. Maybe he needs to go to the pen. Stroman, some people are considering, are just not considering, they're discussing whether he should try and go down and play with the Bisons for a few games and try and figure things out. I think you just got to have Stroman figure things out as it is. Let him play through it. He's still playing all right, and if this offense keeps things up, they can hit their way out of trouble.
Stroman is a tough kid. It sucks to see him struggle right now. I'm a huge fan of Marcus Stroman. I love his curveball. I love his fastball. I love the heart that he plays with every single game. It's great to see. And right now, with him struggling, it's bringing a lot of the Blue Jays pitching into question, I think, because he's supposed to be their leader. And with him struggling right now, their leader seems to be Sanchez or a J.A. Happ, of all people, who didn't really have a great season in Toronto a couple of years ago. But I just hope Stroman finds his way, finds how to spin that ball more, get his curveball back, get his confidence back, and lead this team to a playoff series win.
As great as the fans of Toronto have been, they've been wrong on quite a few things. J.A. Happ has been great. Marco Estrada has, found himself in Toronto. And even R.A. Dickey. Sure, he's not a Cy Young anymore, but he's been serviceable as a Toronto Blue Jay. With Sanchez, with the discussion of him going to the pen, I think I'd almost like to see Stroman go to the pen, figure things out, pitching a few less innings throughout the week. Let Sanchez keep going. Gibbons is just, he's saying, I can't sit him right now. He's just pitching way too well. I can't make a decision. Maybe let Stroman go into the pen for a few games and call up Drew Hutchinson. He's been playing really well with the Buffalo Bisons. We've seen him start before, and by no means is he ever going to be the ace of the Toronto Blue Jays or maybe even one of their top pitchers or any team's top pitcher in the MLB, but he's certainly serviceable if your team is batting like the number one offensive team in the league.
Me personally, I'd be nervous to put in Drew Hutchinson just after what happened last year. I think that he is the next Ricky Romero. He used to be good. He used to be able to keep command of his pitches. But after what I saw last year, I'd have to see some video and I'd just have to see him be successful in some sort of way down in Buffalo. I'd just have to see it for myself.
He's been pretty well in Buffalo. He has not been having any issues there. I think he's certainly ready to at least get another chance up here, being the fifth guy in the rotation. Sounds like he's going to get a spot start this coming week. There's a stretch coming up where the Blue Jays are just playing, I think, 11 days in a row. So Gibbons has already mentioned he wants to bring up Hutchinson for a spot start. I think right now the main thing, if Hutch comes up, he's not coming up because he's going to be on this roster during the playoffs. He's coming up to make an appearance, here
maybe
and there.
Make a statement of that you were wrong about me last year. It was just a bad year. I belong in this rotation. I belong on this team. That
would be perfect if you were to do something like that. The Blue Jays are one of the teams this year that have had the fewest guys start games. The lineup's been healthy. J.A. Happ, Marco Estrada, R.A. Dickey, Aaron Sanchez, and Marcus Stroman. These guys have been able to pitch, almost every time that it's been their turn. It's time to start giving some rest around for some of these younger guys. And a guy like Sanchez, you don't want him throwing too many innings right now if he's on a strict inning limit. We definitely don't want him to injure himself later on in the season. I'm not a huge proponent of putting on an innings limit and telling a guy that he's done when he hits a certain number, but it's not my call. And I certainly think that the Blue Jays organization has a number, and once he approaches that, if they don't take him out, they're going to be watching him very closely, and he won't be a starter, that's for sure. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at TheFanalystPod, subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and like our page on Facebook. Now, I was teasing this earlier, and I'm going to give my explanation now. DraftKings has picked up the CFL as their latest fantasy sports offering, and I think this is a fantastic idea and a fantastic opportunity for the CFL. Something that a lot of fans of North American football will find is that watching CFL and NFL are very different. A lot of people don't like the CFL. They find it irrelevant when you're talking football because they have one less down. The ball's a little bigger. The whole league it's very different. As similar as it is, it's very different. Yes, it's football, but it's Canadian football. It's played differently, and it's a different type of game. There's a lot more throwing with one less down, which makes for a lot more entertainment. But with the history with NFL, people just aren't ready to make that change. If you're someone from America, from the U.S., you grew up playing American football. You grew up playing by a certain type of rules, and it's hard to make that adjustment. But what I think what we're doing here is we're not asking people to, play a different type of football. Just watch it. And, what we saw with daily fantasy sports in the PGA, I think can certainly happen in the CFL. The PGA, it's much more of an old dogs game. A lot more older fans are watching the PGA, but a younger generation has gotten very interested through fantasy sports. And I think the CFL could benefit from this as well, because before the NFL starts, it's the CFL, and there's not much going on this time of year. Yes, there's baseball every day. Yes, there's PGA every week. But as someone who used to play daily fantasy every day, I was always looking for an opportunity. I really don't like soccer. I would play fantasy soccer, and I would watch the games because of it. CFL could certainly take advantage of this, and I think they need to. They need to embrace this and, try and find a way to maximize the opportunity here, because this could be the kind of thing that turns it around for the CFL. It could really raise viewership in the US, and I've talked to a few people from the US who actually enjoy the CFL. It just doesn't get the opportunity through the media in the US. I think this could be a real big chance for them. So hopefully daily fantasy sports have a new impact on the CFL, and I think there's a chance. I think there's a chance that this could really help the league grow. Now, of course, talking about CFL football, people are going to agree and disagree whether they think that it's something that can actually pick up and gain any more traction. A lot of people say that the CFL is dying and that, it's never going to be what the NFL is. And I would agree, it's not going to be what the NFL is, but I think it can certainly grow. So, whether you agree or disagree with me, let me know in the comment section below. You can also tweet me at any time at FanalystDrew. And, you can tweet me about anything in this podcast. Send me your tweets. Let's talk. Thanks for tuning into the Fanalist Podcast. I'm Andrew, and you can follow us at TheFanalystPod.